Welcome to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank Studio. Hope you're having a great day as we continue to celebrate all the amazing people who are working across the state of Mississippi to make this such a great place to live, work, and play. We're going to be joined in just a second by Ron Barnes from Coast Electric, someone I've worked in the community with for many, many years. Someone, I hate to say how many years, and we'll maybe talk a little bit more about that when Ron joins us. But before we go to Ron, I want to move over to my friend Kyle Curley, the producer of the show, and just say, first of all, good morning to you, Kyle. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing pretty good. How about yourself?
I'm doing really good. So as I've said many times on the show, Kyle is a jack of all trades. Not only is he the producer of this show, and you can set your watch by Kyle on this show. We've done over 1,200 conversations together over the last 4 or so years. But he's also involved in operations for SuperTalk Mississippi Media. He's heavily involved in multiple radio stations here on the Mississippi Gulf Coast. But in his not when he's not at work time, does the music in the Superdome during the Saints games. And we have the opportunity every Friday to be visited by Jeff Duncan from NOLA.com and the Times-Picayune and talk about the Saints. But you know, I'm looking forward to the season getting started. Are you guys cranking up, Kyle, getting ready to go?
We are. We had our first tech rehearsal earlier this week, and it's all for real, I guess, come Sunday.
It's all
in the morning, but you know, it is what it is.
I've joked many times that when the music is great in the Superdome, the Saints win, and when they lose, it's because of a bad game plan. It has nothing to do with the music. But it's interesting. The NFL is very specific about the way they approach things. And Kyle, there's some things Kyle can do, some things he can't do. But he does try to accommodate in the area where he has the leeway what the players want. And from one year to the next, you know, that might change. But the core group of players will be mostly the same, it looks like, this year. Don't you see it the same way?
From what I can tell from afar, yes. I honestly have not paid that close attention to the roster. I kind of like to be surprised when I show up Sunday because, I mean, to be honest, what we have on the field Sunday is not going to be what we have on the field week one. So
yeah.
It's hard to get engaged, you know, from the last preseason game when nobody plays.
But if there's not a lot of change, then you kind of know what the requests are from the team. And you play a wide variety of music, don't you?
Yes. And opening it up a little bit more this season. So we'll see how it goes.
What does opening it up mean in your world?
Opening it up means we're going to play a little bit more rock, a little bit more newer versus the older. It's kind of hard. In my mind, newer is not new. Typical listener slash person that we're going to ask questions about, you know, their new is something that they really know is something that's about a year old that the majority of people know. So,
well, what's cool about that is you've been involved in WCPR since it was launched over 20 years ago. And you're aficionado of rock music, so you got a wide repertoire you can draw from, don't you?
Yes, and then at the same time, you disguise it in a way that the players don't notice because you always like to keep those guys hyped. It's always fun when you come back from break or you coming back from whatever it is, a punt return or whatever, and the players are actively getting the fans to dance.
Hey, listen, man, it's got to be thrilling. You know, it's got to be thrilling to be at a Saints game and know that when you engage your board, you have the ability to have everybody in the Superdome stand up, and you can watch specific players literally responding to what you just did. That's pretty cool, man.
Yeah, it is. Anytime that you can, whatever form of expression you want to say at DJ or just kind of direct some musical tunes, and you're actively getting the majority of 76,000 people to get up and do something, that's pretty fun.
Did you ever get a chill bump?
A few times. It's been, you know, they come about once or twice a game, I think. Yeah.
That's cool. That's cool to hear that. I mean, that's got to be a neat thing. And if you play the right music, you're getting people you get, especially players, you're getting them all pumped and ready to roll. So that's neat. It'll be interesting to see. I'm hopeful the season's going to be better than some are writing about, that maybe the Saints are going to be a sleeper this year. So we shall see,
We are in the division that should be won by us. Yes.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. I think the new offensive coordinator is going to have a very positive impact, and the defense is going to be much improved. And they were good last year, but I think with the addition of Chase Young and a healthy defensive line group, man, they might be formidable. They may be a top 5 defense before it's all over with.
Yeah, they should be. And, to be honest, that defense starting to get old, but then again, they're going to bring some new blood in. So hopefully the transition from a very old defense to a new defense to a seasoned defense is easier.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. Well, listen, it's good. Thanks for all you do to keep the show moving, man. We appreciate you. So now let's move over to my friend Ron Barnes. He's the CEO of Coast Electric, somebody I've known for a long time, man. We've worked in the community. I don't even want to say, Ron, but it's been a long time. But you're still swinging, and I'm swinging in a different way, through these conversations. But it's great to be able to stay in touch with you, my friend.
Hey, thanks, Ricky. It's always good to see you. And yeah, I'm not only remembering all those years, but I'm starting to feel them as well.
Yeah, good. I think from time to time I can absolutely empathize with you, because I know that feeling well. So, Ron, for people who have not heard us talk before, let's kind of build a little bit of a framework before we get into. We'll talk a little bit about hurricane season that's upcoming. We'll talk a little bit about some of the capital investments that you guys are making, your commitment to the community, and lots of stuff like that. But before we do, let's give them a feel for what is Coast Electric.
So thank you for that, Ricky. Coast Electric is an electric distribution cooperative. We serve about 90,000 meters in Harrison, Hancock, and Pearl River counties. We typically serve contiguously with Mississippi Power. So where Mississippi Power stops, then we would start. And we're primarily, you would say, more in the rural areas, although a lot of, the city's grown out to the rural areas now.
Yeah, an example of where I live on the northern shore of Back Bay and Biloxi, and you would think that we would be Mississippi Power, but we're not. Coast Electric is the company that services us.
That's right.
And I've had really, really good experience with Coast Electric. That's my story. And you guys have worked really hard to upgrade the system and invest heavily. Well, again, we'll get into some of those investments in a second, but it's, you got to stay on top of it, because your industry is changing rapidly all the time, isn't it?
It's really changed more in the last probably 5 to 10 years than in the history of the electric industry. A lot of it is government regulation, but also technology is so much better now, Ricky, that we're able to do things, make investments in our system that just make the system much more reliable than it ever was in the past. We do have a lot of overhead lines. We're about 75% of our system is overhead. But even in overhead, you have ways now through technology and automation to be able, and especially with the fiber that we've put in, to be able to limit or reduce the number of outages when you have a bad thunderstorm coming through, is a good example.
Well, and it's fascinating what that will do. Before, it used to require human intervention of some sort, and today the switching and all these technical upgrades that you've done give you the ability to have a much more resilient system than you used to have.
Yeah, it's really amazing, because we started putting these devices about the same time that we started building our fiber back in 2020. We started putting more of these devices throughout our system. And then with the advent of AI, which a lot of these systems come with AI built in, and what's shocking to me is to have a situation where you have a power line that normally would have gone out, let's say a feeder line, and it would have gone out and you would have disrupted 1,000 consumers from getting power until you had someone back on the scene, physically clear the line, then pick the line back up if it needed that, or reframe to the pole if needed that. Well, now this technology is so smart that it says, okay, I know where the fault is. I'm only going to turn off 50 or 100 accounts, I'm going to leave the other, let's say 900 on. And then when we go out to clear that, we're clearing an outage that we've always done. It's just we're getting very few customers are actually out and have to be turned back on. And that, to me, is the kind of thing that technology's allowed us to do.
Yeah, it's really, really important when you live in a set of communities like we live in, where thunderstorms are kind of part of our deal. And, of course, hurricanes. And when we get back on the other side, we'll talk about how quiet the season has been. But it doesn't keep you guys from planning. You don't wait for there to be a storm before you get ready. There's tremendous training and preparation and coordination between other power companies that have to take place on an ongoing basis, even if the season is quiet so far. When we come back on the other side, we'll continue our conversation with Ron Barnes from Coast Electric. We'll see you after this. Welcome back to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizen Bank Studio. Hope you're having a great day. And I'm really enjoying this visit today with my friend Ron Barnes, who's CEO for Coast Electric. We talked a little bit about what Coast Electric was and the area that they serve. And we were talking about technological advancements and all the things that happen around that. And when you start to think about how you use that technology, especially after storms, and you start thinking about storms, you can't help but think about hurricane season. And as most of the listeners know, I'm a little bit of a tropical weather nerd, pay a lot of attention to it and follow a lot of smart people on the subject. But it's been a pretty quiet season so far, but that hasn't kept you guys from doing massive amount of planning, has it?
No, Ricky, we pray for a quiet season every year. And every year we spend really almost the entire year planning and preparing because we understand that life cannot get back to normal until power is back on. So we run our mock drill usually in April or May of every year. But that's really the culmination of all the work that has gone on. And look, it's everything from making sure you've got the right materials, you've got the right contracts in place to get help in here after a storm for mutual aid. You got to make sure that you've got vendors to handle feeding people, housing people. I mean, heck, after Katrina, I've never seen so many people that came from other areas and didn't understand our heat and humidity, and they needed products to help them with rash. So it's even things like that you just got to think to really every degree of what is going to make people work faster, better, more efficiently to get folks' power back on. And it really is a year-round thing, Rick. Yeah,
it's amazing. I had the opportunity. I worked at Mississippi Power for a short period of time in between I was in pre-med. I changed my major and went on to, get a business degree, and the rest is history. But in between, though, I actually worked in the purchasing department at Mississippi Power while I was going to Mississippi Gulf Coast Community College. I worked with Bobby Nichols. I give him a lot of credit, in fact, for kind of helping. My dad died during that period of time, and Bobby was such a great mentor to me and really pushed me to achieve the most out of life I could, to be the best version of myself. And I give him a lot of credit for helping me really become very goal-oriented the way that I was, and ultimately led to me becoming the publisher of the Sun Herald and beyond. But yeah, a lot of time. But during Hurricane Frederick in 1979, I was working in purchasing department, and I was assigned to helping make sure that the central inventory of the company was coordinating with all the various places. Man, I learned so much in that short period of time, but you don't realize the amount of goods, as I was going to say goods and services, but really what I'm trying to say is parts that are necessary out in the field, and how massively those are drawn on. I mean, Hurricane Frederick was a big time wind event, especially in Jackson County, but not just Jackson County. And the amount of coordinating that needed to take place there. I was fascinated as a young guy working in purchasing. I was fascinated with it back in those days. But when you get to that level, you appreciate just what it takes to coordinate. You're not talking just about linemen and transmission line people and all it's getting them what they need to help recover. And I can only imagine what that means for getting inventory set and all that. I mean, it's massive, isn't it?
Yeah, a good example is in Hurricane Katrina, which, that's the big one. We had to replace 10,000 transformers and 30,000 poles. Now, you think about that, 30,000 poles is just mind-boggling. Where do you find 30,000 poles? Then you got to have the labor to dig the holes and put them in and restring all the wire on them. So it really is a massive undertaking. There's no way you can have enough material stored for a big storm like that. You've got to rely on your networks, and the best way to handle those networks is to have all that planned in advance. So we don't rely on any one thing anywhere. And that's one of the things I think Katrina taught us. The best lesson is make sure you've got a lot of resources, a lot of vendors. Make sure you've got duplicate and even triplicate things that you might need to be able to get the power back on. Because again, until power comes back on, we're just not going to be able to get people's normal lives back to order.
Hey, Ron, I remember, as you know, I worked so closely with Haley Barber after the storm, and I remember we would often, in various forums, give speeches together, and he would often show a satellite view of Mississippi right after Katrina. And I think the whole state was black. I mean, literally the whole state was black. So it was interesting. So under normal circumstances, you don't have a Hurricane Katrina. Under normal circumstances, we get hit and you get help. You get help from all across this state, don't you?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we've got a great mutual aid. Fortunately for us, we've been able to help more than we've needed help in the last few years. But when we need help, it's there. The cooperative network is amazing and wanting to help each other. We call it cooperation among cooperatives. So we have people from South Carolina, from Tennessee, from Florida, Georgia, Alabama, Texas, Arkansas, you name it. And then just a lot of folks from North Mississippi as well that will quickly come down and help us restore. And then we'll do the same for them. That's why we call it mutual aid, Ricky. I don't think we could do it on our own.
I think the power companies, I think there are probably a lot of industries that have that. I mean, certainly at the Sun Herald, after Hurricane Katrina, we were part of a major company, second largest newspaper company in America. At one point, now this is not going to be a big number to you because of what you were facing after Hurricane Katrina, but I remember at one point I said, exactly how many people are here right now from Knight Ridder? And the answer was 67. And that's a big number for a newspaper like Knight Ridder, like the Sun Herald. But they came in from all over the place to help us. So the industries do that. But boy, I tell you what, the gold standard for doing that is the power companies and how you guys work together. It's kind of a year-round. It's just understood that you're going to do whatever you got to do to help your brethren get out of whatever mess they're in. It's just what you do, isn't it?
Our linemen live for opportunity to help others. So they help others every day through connecting power lines, fixing outages, building new power lines where there's going to be growth in the area. But when you want to see a lineman really get excited, let him go work on someone else's system to repair it and watch how people treat them. Because these are people that understand that without these folks coming in from out of state, typically, they're just not going to be able to get their lives back in order. And they become really, truly heroes into those communities. Sometimes they have people that they've made friends with on a storm, they stay friends with the rest of their lives. So to me, it's that brotherhood of linemen that really, and look, there's every area of the company that has to be working in tune. You talked about purchasing. It's the folks feeding and housing. But really at the end, it's the guys putting those power poles back up, and they deserve all the credit that is due to them.
It's incredible. It really is. And you're right about the brethren that has developed as a result of it. The other thing, I know that they're going to be an injury or two here along the way, but when you look at the safety record, generally speaking, as it relates to the aftermath of a storm like Zeta was, for people who are not from the coast, you may not have really understood this storm that snuck up on us in late October. It was a Category 3 when it hit. And when it came to coastal Mississippi, I'll never forget it because I had COVID at the time. Usually with a storm, you have these waves that come through and it's really, really windy and it settles down. But with Zeta, it was just like this constant, steady burst of wind. And the damage to the power infrastructure was pretty significant, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. We had about 3/4 of our system out. We got all all the lines picked back up and all the members back on within 7 days. But I remember thinking at the time, this is the worst storm we've had since Katrina, and I would in no way compare it to Katrina.
Yeah.
But it was a very significant hurricane that caused a lot of damage. And quite expensive as well. You know, even on a 7-day storm like that, a Cat 3, we may end up spending, $15 to $20 million.
That's unbelievable. The gold standard. Hopefully, it stays that. I said you shouldn't say gold standard.
There forever.
Yeah, that's not the gold standard. That's the wrong way to say it. But in terms of recovery, for sure, because you're talking about 30,000 poles, Ron. That's a pretty substantial effort right there, my friend.
Yeah, 3,500 employees working on that storm. Coast Electric at any time might have 250 employees. So you see how it really takes a village to bring all those folks in to help us.
Yeah, I was working closely with Anthony DePazzi, who at the time was president of Mississippi Power Company. God rest his soul.
Amen.
But I worked closely with him and watched, because of having the opportunity to be in the trenches with him, what Mississippi Power Company was doing during that time. And it was inspiring to watch all of y'all and what you were able to accomplish in a very, very short period of time. And I looked at my neighborhood after the storm and thought, whew, buddy, I don't see this getting fixed anytime soon. And anyone who could get power back on, who could receive power, that was the way you guys talked about it, had it in a reasonable amount of time, which is really, really dramatic to think about. Hey, when we come back on the other side, we're going to talk a little bit more about the kind of capital expenditures that are going into a company like Coast Electric, and get some understanding of what it takes to keep this organization moving forward. We'll see you after this. Welcome back to the Ricky Matthews Show. I really appreciate you joining us as we continue to celebrate so many amazing people who are working in the trenches to make this such a great place to live, work, and play. I love saying it because it's true. And conversations with people like Ron Barnes, who's the CEO of Coast Electric here on the coast, is a good example of that. We'll talk about some capital expenditures here in just a second. And Ron and I have had numerous conversations before. In fact, the first conversation, we talked about his ascendancy at Coast Electric, and led him to becoming the CEO of the company. But what guided you is very similar to the same thing that guided me, which is an internal culture that sort of expected you to be engaged in the community. In fact, they knew that what you learned and what I learned was that the more you're involved in the community, the better your company is going to be, because you're going to be in tune with the needs of the community. That's not just lip service for Coast Electric. I mean, you lived it, didn't you, Ron?
Yeah, I really, truly did, and really still do. It's just something I've always been passionate about. You know, if you're going to live a place, you want that place to be the best it can be. I have 4 children, 2 grandchildren. I just want for all people to enjoy and love the place that I enjoy and love. To me, the best way to do that is to give and sow back into my community, really, quite frankly, Ricky, the blessings that I've had in my life, and I just want to share that and give it back.
Yeah, I see it. And how that manifests itself is, I wonder, have you ever done this before, but how many boards have you been on in your career? How many chairmanships have you held? How many efforts have you been involved in that were ad hoc, that just popped up because there was a need in the community to fill a gap? If you were to add those up, I bet it's a big number.
It probably is a big number for both of us. I don't think about that, but I know that really everything that I've done community-wise, and it's been from the Business Council to United Way to the Chamber, to currently I'm on the executive committee for Heart Walk. Just all these things I find joy in doing, and not only for myself, but also getting my employees involved in those things. And it's really my way of saying, I've given this little thing back for all that has been given to me and to Coast Electric and our fiber company, Coast Connect. If we can give just back a little bit, I really do believe that as we sow into these things, way more is going to be given back to us in return. But that's not why we do it. We do it because we want to have a great place to live, work, and play. And I love the Gulf Coast, even though I'm not a natural native here. I grew up in Jackson, Mississippi, but we've chosen this to be our home, and we just want the very best for not only us, but the families that live here as well.
Oh, you're a coastal Mississippian, believe me, you are.
Yes, I am.
Yeah, it's there's no way to know that number, and I would never know what that number is for me either, to be honest with you. But why it's important is, I think one of the good things about the conversation you and I had the first time we visited together was a reminder that everyone should think about how they can give more. It's all about paying it forward and realizing that one of the reasons why Mississippi, especially here in coastal Mississippi, why we are resilient is we have a lot of people who are willing to burn the midnight oil for the community, so to help fill gaps. So you can't have enough United Ways and Gulf Coast Business Council and Coast Chambers and Hancock County Chambers, and you can name them all. You can't have enough of those. There's always going to be gaps to fill. So what's cool about an organization that makes it part of their culture, like Coast Electric, is you're building institutional capacity inside your organization to understand it. And the way that John Harrison talked about it in the very first conversation we had in the very first week I had this show was about you can't just go lead something. You've got to go get involved in something and learn how it works. And then you go do another organization, and then eventually you lead an organization. And then what you're doing is you're building community capacity. And then with that institutional knowledge, you can do great things. And you think about the institutional knowledge that Coast Electric has built through its employees, through massive involvement in so many different ways. It just helps. It helps to have an organization. Think about what you do, and maybe if another CEO over here is not involved at all and not building that capacity at all, but it's a relatively large organization, think about what they're not doing for the community they could be doing for the community. So the goal would be to inspire others who are in a position of power to be able to, make changes in the organization so employees can give back. That's what would be my hope. And that's why it's important to focus on it for sure.
Well, and Ricky, what I found is that our employees that get involved and do community projects, which many of them we allow to do, on business hours, not all, but many, they're always the happiest employees. They're always the most engaged, the ones that you really don't have any trouble with because they're fulfilling something in their lives beyond just, a paycheck. Yeah.
Isn't that true? There's a meaning that's greater, and you guys not only enable it, you expect it. And I think that's really good. And then through the program that you have, the Roundup program that you have, it gives you the opportunity to build funds from, people who are paying for their power bills. And that creates a fund that you can then use to help the community. So it's so many different ways it works, doesn't it?
It really does. Yeah, we're so proud of the Roundup program. It's everybody doing just a little. It might be nickels and dimes, but it's equaled over $1.6 million in donations directly back to the 3 counties that we serve. We don't take any administrative fees off that. Every penny goes directly to support the causes. And by the way, we work with the Gulf Coast Community Foundation, and really could not do it without them. The folks over there are just incredible in the way they help us administer getting those funds out to the people that need them most.
I think it's cool. It's an integrated community, and this is what it takes to be successful. Hey, listen, if you think about the last, say, 3 or 4 or 5 years, how many tens of millions of dollars have you invested back into the company?
It's literally, Ricky, been in the neighborhood of $200 million, which is a little scary for me to think about that number. We've invested $150 million, and really about a little over that now, just in building fiber, over 4,000 miles of fiber to support both smart grid initiatives, which are those things we talked about earlier, giving us the ability to get people's power back on quicker after there's a problem. But we've also spent, about another $50 million just improving the core electric system. And a lot of this is the automation we talked about. Ultimately, I've really preached that there are 3 main important things that we do. And of course, we're in the quality of life business, but we want reliable power at a competitive and fair price, and we want to give the best service that anyone can give. But I give them in that order for a reason. If you don't have reliable electricity, you really don't have satisfied customer base, and for us, members. So we really have put a lot of effort, time, resources, people into making sure that we are building the best electric system we can. Now, we're still going to have outages. We live in the second highest electric, lightning area in the country. So we're going to have outages. To me, it's about, can you limit those? And then when you do have outages, can you really get your folks out there quickly to get people back on? Because again, no one's life in today's modern world is going to really work well without electricity.
Isn't that true? And by the way, speaking of lightning, last year, this same time last year, we were all complaining that we haven't had any rain, and it was
too dry.
We were in the middle of one of the driest periods we've seen in a long time. And then this year, it seems like every storm that comes through is loaded with lightning. I mean, it's amazing how one year is this and next year it's that. It's never the same, is it?
Yeah, my chief engineer sent me an email Monday morning, and he said, "Boss, we just got beat up again." And, that's what lightning does. And look, the electric systems are designed to go out to protect the electric system. I know that, people taking power, they don't really want to hear that. But that's really the way they're designed, is to protect themselves, take the system out, and then we quickly try to get it back on again. But we do live in a world now where people just want everything all the time, and we're doing our best to try to accomplish that for them.
Yeah, actually, I took a picture within the last couple of days where one of these lines of thunderstorms was headed toward the coast. I took a picture of it, actually, because on the particular software that I use to track it, it gives you very detailed orientation around where the lightning is. And man, it was like solid lightning bolts. It wasn't like occasional lightning bolts. It was solid lightning bolts. Man, you hate when you see that coming, don't you?
Yeah, the ones we found, the ones that come from kind of Alabama or north, kind of central Mississippi, come south into the coast, they seem to have more lightning in them than the typical that come across Louisiana. Right. Yeah, just a typical that come across Louisiana and Mississippi.
Yeah, we've definitely seen more of those. That is for sure, coming from the north. Really interesting weather patterns. Anyway, hey, when we come back on the other side, we'll have a final segment with my friend Ron Barnes from Coastal Electric. We'll see you after this. Welcome back to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank studio. And I always enjoy the conversations. I say this regularly, but the conversations I have during the breaks, especially with people like Ron Barnes, who's CEO of Coastal Electric here in coastal Mississippi, because we've done so much in the community together, and we love this place, and we both have given a lot back to the community over the many years. I love in retirement being able to do this show. In fact, it gives me the chance to give back and offer what I can to bring attention to people like Ron, who can be an inspiration to others to say, we need to do more. Everybody needs to do a little bit more to help build a better community. And this is true here in coastal Mississippi. It's true across the state of Mississippi. And, this would be an even better place to live if everybody did their share. Pay it forward. Just pay it forward. That's what the story is all about. Ron, you mentioned kind of in passing the amount kind of a commitment you guys have made to investment in the fiber side of what you're doing. But, when you think about broadband access and what that is going to, 51% of Mississippians live in rural areas, the opportunity to have a connected community, I can't understate how important that is. And the bill that provided the opportunity for electric co-ops like yours to be able to get into that business was really revolutionary and unleashed massive investment across the state of Mississippi, and Coastal Electric obviously is among that. But that's been a game changer, hasn't it?
It has. There are 25 electric cooperatives in Mississippi. 17 have either finished their broadband build out to their service territory or very close to that. And we've invested over $1 billion with a B as cooperatives to do this fiber broadband in the rural areas. And the crazy thing is, Ricky, we're offering as good or better service than they have anywhere in the world, in the farthest reaches, to a fishing camp, to a hunting camp. It's just that it's pretty amazing to watch, not only serving these areas, watching how they're now growing faster than they ever have. So it is a direct benefit to the electric cooperative. But just to, I like to say I'm in the quality of life business. To me, that's the job that I have. I try to improve the quality of life with Coast Electric, Coast Connect, and the things I do through the community. Well, there's, to me, nothing better in improving quality of life than giving people a service that is so necessary for today's life in the most rural areas. And then we have been very fortunate because we're now growing in areas that we really haven't grown very much in the past. So, we didn't really want to go into the broadband business. No one else was willing to do it in the rural areas, so we stood up and did it, and we're very proud that we did.
Well, see, what's interesting about the electric co-op business in Mississippi is you guys know the rural communities. You know every rural road. Haley used to talk about, and you remember these stories that he would talk about. He was at a meeting. He saw this family or this couple in, I think he was in Hancock County, and they had big needs. And they pointed out a woman that needed some help, and they went to her, and she really did need help. But he was so touched because she said, no, I don't need this. But look, go down this road and down this road. And he gave him instructions. I don't remember how the story goes, but there was a family down there that needed some help. Well, see, those rural roads where those families are that needed some help after Hurricane Katrina, you're providing power to them now. And so that. And it was a perfect fit. It was a perfect fit. Like I told you this, when Delta Power was in the Delta laying line, it's some of it underground, most of it overhead. They, like where our camp is, there was a county road that went to a lake, and no homes there. It's all rural, and it's farmland. Nobody ever going to live there. But they laid the cable all the way to that lake. And I said, well, why are y'all doing the expense of that? Because we think one day there actually will be a house there. So we're developing the infrastructure that not only serves us today, but will serve us in the future.
Absolutely.
That took a lot of money and forethought to do that. I mean, it's incredible. But you've seen it here on the coast too, haven't you?
Yeah, I mean, we built 4,000 miles of fiber in 4 years, which is almost unheard of. We closed the digital divide in all the rural areas in South Mississippi in a 4-year period. And that to me is an amazing story. Some people have called it the Mississippi Miracle, where we've covered from Tennessee state line to the Mississippi Gulf Coast in almost every rural area in the state. The only areas that the co-ops really haven't done a lot of work is on the Delta, not Delta, but along the western side of the state. But they now have projects that have started in those areas. So within a couple of years, they're going to be covered as well. And Ricky, one of the things I'm very excited about, we're actually building a Mississippi fiber network middle mile where we will connect all the co-ops in North Mississippi, Central Mississippi, and South Mississippi together. And then we'll be able to offer much better service to our subscribers, but also shared services amongst the group through that middle mile network.
Wow, that's so awesome. It is, some have said it's one of the most transformative things we could do, especially in a poor state like Mississippi with so many people living in rural areas, to create the connection. We had a satellite, well, it wasn't satellite, but we had this dish that pointed at a water tower, and we had pretty decent internet connection because of that, but it was still spotty, and we had direct view to the water tower. So, fiber optic in the Mississippi Delta is a big deal. Fiber optic in any rural community is a big deal. So anyway, listen, Ron, we're out of time. It's been a pleasure to spend time with you, my friend.
Ricky, it's always a pleasure. I love these conversations, and thanks for everything you do, and keep the faith, buddy. Keep it going.
You bet. Listen, have a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Thanks, my man.